Welcome to another week of Limbus Company patch note analysis and breakdowns of the newly revealed identities and egos. I'm Kai Lottle, and this week we've got something a little special because it's the start of Walpurgis night, which means we've got an array of returning identities and egos from Labotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina. So, without dallying anymore, let's just get straight into it. Starting with Hook Office Fixer Hong Lu.
이 사무소에서는 아무렇지 않게 사람을 죽여도 칭찬받는 거죠? 갈고리 사무소. 여기 오래 있지는 못할지도 모르겠어요. 사무소라는 게 우후죽순 생기는 만큼 갑자기 문을 닫는 경우도 많다잖아요.
Hook Office Fixer Hong Lu is based off of Tane from Library of Ruina. He was basically the de facto leader of the group of Hook Office we saw, although we never got to the point of seeing Hook Offices operate. They were a minor group, they had a minor focus on bleed, mainly just they were early game Ruina stuff, so we didn't get a good sense of what they did exactly, but here that's definitely going to change. Looking at his skills, you'll notice they're all pierce, they're all bleed related, and there's some haste related stuff too, so we're getting some support for bleed and haste, two things which we've gotten very minor support for this season, but overall really need more support. Now, if we look at the names of all of his skills, you'll notice Track going first, Rampage, they're all based off of cards that used by Hook Office in Ruina. Now, they don't exactly match one-to-one. Early game Ruina stuff was kind of low on, actual mechanics. Now, beyond the names, there isn't too much similarity between them, beyond the fact that Track is a 0 cost, going first a 2 cost, Rampage is a 3 cost, so it kind of fits that kind of flow there. But looking at the skills itself, his skill 1, Track, is a 2-coin Wrath Pierce skill. At X plus Haste, Final Power plus Y, on heads hit inflict bleed, heads hit inflict bleed count. Basically, all you can ask for skill 1. It's got bleed infliction, it's got bleed count infliction on heads, and it gains a little bit of final power if you have a certain amount of haste. Now, you'd really want a way to build up haste with skill 1, ideally. This unit's kind of low on ways to build up haste, but that's fine. This should serve as a decent, bleed inflictor. Having bleed count on a skill 1's always going to be a great thing. Now his skill 2, going first, is a 3-coin Lust Pierce skill. At X plus Speed, Coin Power plus Y. Once again, that's going to be pretty common stuff, as you could expect. And on use Gain X Haste next turn. Now this is the main way Hook Hong Lu gains haste, through this skill. Because his skill 1 doesn't give him haste, his skill 3 doesn't give him haste, his evade gives him haste, but we'll get to that eventually. Heads hit inflict bleed, heads hit inflict bleed, and if the unit is faster than target, inflict bleed count equal to their speed difference. Now that is an interesting idea. Of course, the infliction bleed on the first 2 coins is only on heads hit, so it's kind of reliant on high sanity. Hong Lu's usually good about keeping his sanity up, and this guy probably won't have anything in particular to synergize with that, but Hong Lu's always got, Land of Illusion to keep his sanity from going down too far, so that really won't be an issue for stuff like this. You can always get the 5% chance though. But the coin 3 is very interesting. The speed difference is how much bleed count you inflict if you're faster than the person. And this is really good for stuff like mirror dungeons where you get just the +2 max speed count and you get a lot of speed up. Or it's very good if you pair it with pretty much the universally best haste support in the game, that being Crow's Eye View from Yisong, his Zane Ego, because of the fact that just gives haste to everyone. So it's just a lot of haste, and it means that this could be a very good skill for just getting a bunch of bleed onto a target. But now, moving on to his skill 3, Rampage, it's a 4-coin Pride Pierce skill. At X plus Speed, Coin Power plus Y, depending on what exactly that means, that could be really good. It's a 4-coin, being able to give it more coin power probably means it'll only be a +1 or a +2 by default, and that speed is going to be necessary for making Rampage something special, especially comparing it to, the Ruina one, where it's just a bunch of weak attacks. But it also deals more damage based on targets missing HP, which is minor thing. It's hard to tell exactly how much more, because it doesn't say here. Could be a lot, could be a little. It's a nice little effect. And heads hit, heal SP, based on bleed on target. Here's the SP heal that's pretty much traditional for Honglu. He loves having his SP up, that's kind of a common gimmick across all his identities. And it's definitely present here. And it's based on bleed on target. There's probably going to be a cap. But the fact that it's like based on bleed is very interesting. It means this is kind of the skill you want to use on someone with high bleed to get your sanity up. Although that's only a heads hit as well. There's a lot of on heads hits with this identity. It's kind of definitely based on having high sanity, as you'd expect from Honglu. And then just more bleed with the third coin, more bleed with the fourth coin. Pretty simple stuff. Overall, a lot of bleed, a lot of haste. Now, moving on to his defensive skill, quickness, and his passive hook are also named after things from Ruina, quickness being based on another hook off this page, and hook being just pretty much one for one the passive from Ruina. But starting with quickness, if target a certain amount of bleed gain coin power, could always be good to have a pretty beneficial evade skill, although this is the kind of thing that is going to be very inconsistent, depending on when you evade. They might not have bleed, they might do. It'll just be a little benefit if they do, though. And on evade, gain haste next turn. Now, notice it's on evade and not on use. It's probably going to be only one haste, but this means if you evade, say, 4 coins back to back with a single evade skill, you'll gain 4 haste next turn. It doesn't say it's capped. It's probably going to be capped at, like, say, 3 haste or something like that, but that still is a lot. And as mentioned before, the passive hook is 1 for 1, the Ruin one. Upon defeating enemy, gain X attack power up next turn. It's probably just going to be 1. Actually, it might just be more than that, honestly, since 1 is pretty underwhelming. Hook was meant to be... Hook's like the 4th passive you see in the game. You don't see a lot of good passives around, but it's pretty solid for, you know, just kind of building up momentum. Similar to, you know, the effect of, you know, Vying Spear at Heathcliff's base ego. It's passive. Yeah, could be a nice one. It requires Honglu to be the one to defeat an enemy, though, which means it's going to be a little hard to trigger some of the times. And then a support passive, mass-produced bionic gear. This is the only thing so far that isn't named after something from Ruina, but that is because it is instead based off of his weapon itself, which is a Union Co. Claw, who's a workshop we haven't seen yet. I'm actually currently working on a video on workshops that hopefully will be out before the update comes out, but you know, it's hard to say. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. And when an ally with the fastest speed defeats enemy with bleed, gain attack power next turn. Basically just hook, but for someone else and with the requirement for them having bleed, the target having bleed. Pretty simple stuff. Overall, it's nice to have some bleed support. You may argue that this is kind of like taking up the same place as Kurokumo Honglu being bleed support, although Kurokumo Honglu is kind of anti-bleed support, so having an identity like this, which is kind of just a little better, like synergizing with bleed teams overall, is going to be very nice just for something bleed related that isn't nails or bleed count. The only thing like that we have is Kurokumo Ryoshu right now, so that's good. Now, next up, before we move on to the 3-star identity, let's go over the ego also being introduced in Walpurgis Night, that being the new 10th ego for Mersault, Regret.
구속구가 나의 폭력을 저지하기엔 턱없이 모자르지.
Regret is, it's a Wrath ego, it's a Teth ego, so it's going to be replacing his, Corkscrew Wallop, something that's a little unfortunate to be replaced, but I don't think it's going to be missed too much. And of course, it's all about Tremor. This makes sense, it's a giant, you know, like, what's the term, it's a wrecking ball, there's a better term for it, like, flail or something, yeah. A flail with a little iron ball on it, so it's all about just knocking someone off their feet. So, taking a closer look at it, you can see that before attack on the Awakening, remove random negative effect applied to self. This is similar to something like, say, the passive for N-Corp Mersault, or the passive for DHE Rodion. It'll just remove a negative status effect. It's a little minor thing, it could be good, and we'll see, it's kind of relied. On Hate Inflict, now this is a word in the worst way possible. Inflict plus X plus Wrath Absolute Resonance divided by Y Tremor count. What this means is it inflicts a certain amount of tremor count, in addition, you know, more tremor count based on the Wrath resonance, but not 1-for-1. It's worded insanely stupidly. And then it tremor bursts. If the target does not have a stagger threshold upon burst tremor, instead deals Wrath damage based on the amount of stagger threshold by burst tremor. This is what we've been wanting for burst tremor. Stuff like this, but on the actual identities. Because if the enemy doesn't have a way to actually, doesn't have a stagger threshold, it's not going to be going to waste. It's instead being turned into straight up damage. Similar to what sinking does to enemies that don't have SP. Which is very good to see. It's kind of unfortunate that it's going to be, you know, only on certain tremor bursts. But it'll be good to see. It does Wrath damage, so, you know, it'll be based on the Sin affinities, which could be good, could be bad. Pretty cool, more tremor stuff. Mersault's not the best person for tremor stuff. While he does have, like, Pursuance, he's got Capote, he's got some good tremor bursting egos already. I don't really think he needs another one. But, like, what else are they gonna do with this? Blunt damage up? Well, there's a little bit of blunt power up, but, we'll get to that. The Corrosion, if the unit has a negative status effect, instead of clearing it, instead gives the user more attack weight. Now this is very nice, that's for sure. It'll kind of be reliant on the enemies inflicting something onto you, because unless I'm mistaken, I don't think there's any identities on Mersault that actively debuff him. But there's a decent chance one of his egos does. Oh yeah, never mind, I just realized the joke. Chains of Others. You use Chains of Others, next turn you can use his Ego Corrosion skill, and it'll gain, you know, effective weight, because of the fact that Chains of Others debuffs himself and his target. Yeah, that makes sense. Once again, I'll hit Burst Tremor, raises target threshold by percentage of tremor on target, on top of the Burst Tremor. If the target does not have stagger threshold, Burst Tremor, deal Wrath damage once again. This one reduces tremor count. The Awakening doesn't, but the Corrosion does, depending on how much this is. This could be good, this could be bad. Depending on if it's, you know, just like an awful amount. We'll see. And after attack, gain Bind and Blunt power up next turn, which will just make him slower but more blunt damage. Could be good. He's got some blunt stuff that he can work decently well with. How much blunt does his Rose Banner have? Some? I don't know how much. It's going to work well with Liu, though, because it's for the primary and secondary on Liu. In combination with Capote, assumably, for, you know, just kind of maximum tremor stuff. And now the Ego passive is, Bound Wrath. It's named after Change Wrath, assumably, or, you know, just other things, and of course Wrath, because it's a Wrath Ego. The leftmost skill on the dashboard loses power and gains coin power, so it rolls less on default, but if you can just roll the coin correct, if you can just roll heads on the coin, it'll just get stronger. Now, Mersault has a lot of skills that are multiple coins, but, you know, low base power, low amount per coin. This could work really well with a lot of them. Stuff like Warp Mersault's, skill 3, or Rose Banner Mersault's skill 3. He's got a lot of 4 or 5 coin skills that are just kind of below average because their coin power is pretty low. But this means they'll roll worse if you use at low sanity, which will be at low sanity after using Ego. But it'll roll better if you can get, you know, some heads on that. And at the start of the turn, if at X minus speed, if he's below a certain speed count, gain Blunt power up. Similar as with the self-bind he gains with the Corrosion. Overall, a lot of cool stuff for going for this Ego. It's more tremor, but this is like pretty positive tremor in my opinion, because it's actually going to do damage to things without stagger thresholds. We'll have to see. But now, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the 3-star of Walpurgis Night, Labotomy Ego Regret Faust.
T0254 경로 상태에 대한 작업을 시작합니다. 지휘팀 관리직 팀장 파우스트, 관리자님의 명령대로 루피 연행 특정 제압에 들어갑니다. 제압 완료. 경보에는 익숙해지시는 게 좋을 겁니다. 아직 50일까지 많은 날이 남은 것을 파우스트는 알고 있으니까요.
Labotomy Ego Regret Faust is a super cool identity because it's an actual agent from Labotomy Corporation wearing their ego, wearing their 10th level ego, but still doing absolute, like, wonders with it. You can see here the actual armband Faust has on. It indicates she's part of Malkuth's department control team, which she mentions in one of her dialogue pieces. But also, because it's been, like, ornately decorated, it means she's been in the department for over 10 days, which means she's survived roughly 20% of the time in LobCorp, since it's only 50 days. Now, it's only 10th level gear, so she's probably not the strongest, but she's definitely a pretty good agent, all things considered. Now, let's go over skill 1 and 2 first. We'll save the skill 3 after. We're just going to go over these two first. Now, so, skill 1, I guess, overall, it's more tremor stuff. It's a lot of tremors, a lot of tremor count. It's tremor count on self, first and foremost. So let's take a look at that. Skill 1, Contracting Straitjacket. It's a blunt, single coin sloth skill. On use, gain tremor count. Clash lose, gain tremor count. So if you actually fail to win a clash with this one, you will gain more tremor count, since the on use triggers both ways. And that could be good. Although on hit, you also gain tremor count, so it might turn out the same either way. And on hit, inflict a little bit of tremor count. Good for skill 1, keeping the tremor high. Always important. Skill 2, Metallic Ringing, is in fact a reference to another thing from Forsaken Murder or Ruina, that being Metallic Ringing. It's a 3-coin Pride Blunt skill. On combat start, so you need to actually have enough tremor count when the turn starts. Spend tremor count and gain attack weight for this skill, and on use gain more tremor count. Now it's similar to something like Spice for Yi-Song. This means this is skill 2, it can be a mass attack. That's cool. On heads hit, gain tremor count. On hit, inflict offense level down next turn. The third coin inflicts tremor and plus coin drop next turn. So this inflicts offense level down, tremor, and plus coin drop on a mass attack. It's probably only going to be a 2 target. I don't think it's going to be a 3 target. That would be kind of insane, especially for something we'll see later, but yeah. More mass attack stuff on normal skills is definitely interesting. It's going to be more common the further we go on. We're going to start seeing it, you know, like on skill 2s in due time. We actually already do see it on a tier 2. I meant to say on a 2-star, but we already do have it on 2-star because of She Heathcliff, but you know what I mean. It's going to be more commonplace going forwards, and this is definitely a good example of that. Now, the reason why I saved the skill 3 for, you know, last, well, but beyond the fact that it's the last one, it's got a fair bit of stuff here. Unleashed Violence, 3-coin Wrath Blunt skill. It's assumably named after violence. And combat start, spend tremor count and gain attack weight for the skill. This one's probably going to be a 3 target if I had to guess. It would make sense. It means there's going to be even more tremor count related. You definitely need to have high tremor count in this one. And on Clash Lose, you lose SP. Similar to, you know, how it used to work, Clash Losing loses SP. And deal X% more damage per negative effect on target. Now, the first thing you'll notice about that actually synergizes possibly very well with the skill 2, of course, because you're just going to inflict a bunch of negative effects with the skill 2, especially in mass attack. The next turn you skill 3, you're going to do a bunch more damage. And whenever you get a kill with this one, doesn't need to be a specific coin, you gain even more tremor count for more mass attacks. Now, the 3 coins here do mostly the same thing. Burst Tremor, deal wrath damage by percentage of stagger threshold raised by Burst Tremor. Now, based on the way this is worded, I think this means that even if they don't have stagger threshold, it'll still do a percentage of wrath damage. Similar to, you know, how Molar Otis does a percentage sloth damage on Tremor Burst with some of her skills thanks to her passive. And it's the same effect as skill 1 and skill 2, and the skill 3, but the skill 3 at the very end reduced tremor count by X. There's probably going to be a reduced tremor count by 5, something pretty notable like that. Just as kind of like wipe the slate clean, you know. If they don't have a lot of tremor count, it's probably going to do just ruin the thing. Now, you may notice this is actually pretty similar to the Regret Ego from Ruina. It's 3 coins, each one does stagger damage for the blunt attack, stagger damage for the blunt attack, and the third one is the final one, does more. In this case, it doesn't actually do more, you know, tremor damage, but it reduces tremor count. It's very similar, and that's pretty cool. Although it's very different here, because we've actually got a mass attack on Faust, when the Regret Ego in Ruina was not a mass attack. Moving on to defensive skills, Counter, Gathering Spite, on use, gain tremor count. It's nice to have a way to gain tremor count, you know, with counters, stuff like that. That'll be nice. It's almost certainly going to be a blunt counter, you know how it is. It doesn't specify here. But yeah, that's full gloom, yeah. Passive, Coerced Regret. In a clash, target has negative clash power for every type of negative effects. The more variety of negative effects they have, the less clash power they have. Since with the skill 2 and it's 3 negative effects once again. Or it's only 2 negative effects there, but you know what I mean. Synergize with just negative effects in general. When the unit is alive, enemies afflicted by Tremor Burst gain defense level down when this unit is alive. Which means Faust doesn't need to be the one to Tremor Burst. They just gain defense level down if anyone Tremor Bursts. That's definitely notable. And unless the next SP at turn end, gain Bind and Blunt power up. A lot of stuff here means you can get some benefit from being low sanity. This mental corruption being listed as like its own thing This is probably going to be a common thing then. This will probably be on a lot of Labotomy Egos. Just the way it's phrased, mental corruption, like, as you know, it's like a side passive. That's probably going to be the benefit for getting her to up type 4. And it just means that, you know, the SP she loses with her, you know, losing Clash on skill 3 could work well. One of these might actually end up being a negative. It's hard to say for sure. She doesn't have enough SP loss for me to think for certain. Her skill 1 might be a negative for all we know. So it seems to have benefited losing clashes. And the support passive, Repression Work, which is a reference to the Forsaken Murder, where he absolutely despises Repression Work in LobCorp. Do not work it on him unless you want him to escape. Which is, you know, how you force him to escape if you ever need him to escape, to suppress him or something. In a clash, target of the slowest ally has less clash power if... Oh yeah, the target of the slowest has less clash power if they have a certain amount of negative effects. Similar to the actual positive effect, the first positive effect, but, you know, for the slowest ally. Cool stuff overall. A lot of stuff going for this identity, that's for sure. It's a more Tremor once again. It could have been Blunt Power Up. It's probably for the best it's not Blunt Power Up though, because if there was actually a way to get Blunt Power Up on Faust, it would make Fluid Sac even stupider. But we'll see. It doesn't do a great job of funding Fluid Sac. I thought it might, since, you know, Gloom Envy kind of fits decently well, but no. Nothing like that, except, you know, there is Gloom on the counter, but probably not going to be great for, you know, like, Refraction Early 2 if you haven't done that yet. I still need to get sub 150. But definitely going to be a very strong Tremor unit overall. Tremor fans are eating, that's for sure. But now, finally, let's get through the patch notes. Greetings to your manager. Updates at the normal time. Target extraction, new identities, the standard stuff. 7 days login. For Halloween, because they're not doing anything specifically Halloween related, they're just doing a week-long attendance event. You can dig in some minor rewards. The major reward's a deck extraction ticket, so you can see it's nothing big. There's not too big of a deal here. It's just a little bonus for, you know, logging in. Now, notice regarding event identities and egos, there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's basically just saying, like, how you can get, a bunch of, like, event stuff after they've already run out. And you can see, like, there's some graphs on the side to help you understand this. You can read this if you want. Once again, this is just for people that have missed something, if you need to, like, figure out, like, exactly how it's going to work and how they're going to be adding stuff back. Now, optimizations. Improved resource loading speed. Deleted an entire gigabyte of unused resources. That's good. Optimization, always very important. That's for sure. Love to see it. And then some UI improvements. So they've changed the pop-ups they've added a new tab for information on each center, so you can get a general overview a little quicker. And they've also added an option to do something similar like that on the team select screen, alongside just changing the UI in general. Now if we take a closer look here, mind the fact that, you know, it's low quality images, you can see top left here, this is with the new summary tab. It shows all 5 egos, it shows all the skills, the defensive skill, the coins, the roles, stuff like that. It's just a good way to serve as to get a lot of information about this identity quicker. And you can definitely see how they've changed it to be a lot more mechanical instead of like the folder-based thing they were going for beforehand. It's kind of just an overall change they're making with this. They're trying to get a little more consistent style, as there was kind of like a little bit of clash between these old-timey screens and the files. I'm definitely sad to see the file aesthetic going away though, but I understand why they're doing it for a little more consistency across the board. Don't get me wrong, I think it looks worse, but we'll see it. I'll have to see it in action before I can get a good sense, you know? And then as far as the bottom right, this new little thing that shows you, it shows you all your identities, what skills they have, what the damage types, and the sin affinities of their 3 skills and their defensive. That's cool. If you look on the top right, you can also see where it says, you know, ego. You can probably see something similar for their 5 egos too, what they need, what they are. That'll definitely be very good for team building. I have an Excel document I use for this kind of thing because of the fact it's impossible to get like a good sense of this in-game. So this is going to be a big deal, especially for, you know, trying to build around specific sins. Now continuing on with patch notes, more UI improvements. They're changing the actual like selection methods. It's a little like janky, you know, how you have to press that button in the bottom right in order to then switch between changing your stuff and actually selecting sinners. So they're going to be changing that to make it a little more similar. Stage clear results UI also redesigned to fit this, you know, style they're going for. Mirror Dungeon preset function improved, so you can actually get some, like, decent presets going on. You can actually load one of your specifically set teams instead of just doing your previous run, which will be nice for, you know, people who just kind of do the same thing a lot, want to just kind of just build the same thing over and over again quicker. Use their set teams, so you'll be able to actually build teams, you know, beforehand instead of having to do it in the menu. That's pretty nice. Focus encounters staggered label added to skill slots. What they're saying here is that there's a little thing going on. I've got this little... If you take a closer look, you can see it. There's kind of like a little like crack on one of the skill slots to indicate it's been staggered instead of just, you know, doing nothing. Which will definitely help for just figuring out what you want to damage. And the major changes. Adjusted the arrangements of certain orders in Dante's notes. Just some minor things. It really seems... I don't know why it's considered a major change. It just seems to be it's kind of like organizational stuff, fixing that stuff. A lot of bug fixes. Once again, you can go through this if you want. There's still currently a known issue when viewing identity ego details after using ideality. It causes the game to lock. So be careful if you end up using ideality, which you may need to do if you get really unlucky with your pulls for Walpurgis Night. In case you don't know, because Walpurgis Night, you cannot get from extraction. You cannot get from dispenser. You must get it from extractions. And of course, as per usual, 300 lunacy. But that'll be all. I'm gonna actually be streaming when I'll stream with the actual Walpurgis Night when it comes out on Wednesday to make up for the fact I missed this past LobCorp stream. We'll do extractions, we'll do Mirror Dungeon 2 hard with the new stuff, and we'll just see how that goes. But that'll be all for this time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, whatever next time may be. Bye.